Eric, you're very welcome to the ScaleX Insider podcast. Really delighted and thrilled to have you on the show today.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for making me feel like I'm a little closer to Conor McGregor.
The wonderful Irish philosopher Conor McGregor. Yes, he actually was the reason our culture was a win or learn culture, because his trainer John Kavanagh wrote a book by the same name. So,
Whoa.
Yeah. So he resonates strongly in this house.
It's incredible. I love to see fighters. It seems like one of the sports where one person can lift an entire nation to like worldwide prominence and become like a soul symbol. Like you saw with Manny Pacquiao in the Philippines, like a soul hero can like rise from any country in the fighting world. I just find it so fascinating.
Yeah, his story is really that rags to riches story. No, he's been troubled in recent times, so it will be great to see him come back to his old self, and not misled, let's say, by some of the distractions. So, but
Yes.
a wonderful guy. Well, look. Like Conor, our vision is to inspire, connect, and enable millions of ambitious leaders of small and medium-sized enterprises to scale with purpose. So, Eric, I kick off the show with this question to all of our guests. What does scaling with purpose mean to you?
It means a lot. I come from really a small business family, like third, fourth generation entrepreneurs in that small business space. So I really know, I felt sort of what it means to come up at that dinner table and have like, how are we going to make payroll be like the dinner discussion? And man, these are the businesses that just make the world work. Like you look around your local community and they kind of disappear from view. People start to take them for granted. But as soon as something goes off track, that's who you need. And the purpose can be so simple, right? Like I come from the tech world. I love these high-minded, save the world, huge step up in new technologies. That's, I'm very moved by that, but I try to never lose sight of the fact that like, if your plumbing doesn't work, that's the most important thing in your world, and you need help from a small business. And the scaling piece, my friend Brent Beshore has a line like, small businesses don't stay small on purpose. And I worked with a lot of home service providers specifically in my last job. And I've seen so many great people who wanted to help more people, but lacked the skill or the mindset or the determination or the resources or the network or the know-how to scale. And so their impact was always limited. And I think when you get people who have a pure mission, have a purpose, and want to serve others, and they have all of the things that they need to consistently sort of compound and increase their impact and service and reach more people, like that's the magic that makes the world go round. Like those three words, I feel like you nailed it.
Thank you. You just nailed that answer, because that is such a thoughtful, considered answer steeped in experience, which belies your young 33 years. The company you referenced there was Zaarly, and I'm delighted actually that you've stepped into your new CEO role in Scribe Media. It's a company that I know well, who were behind the publishing of our own book, Simple Scaling. I know behind your own two books, and we're going to come to that a little bit later. What's it like being a newbie CEO? How has it been?
Man, almost everybody that I know who is a CEO built their companies, at least in my like age cohort, right? So onboarding as a CEO is a kind of a trip. I'm as we record this, I'm 10 weeks into the job, maybe. And new to the industry. I've been a customer of Scribe like you, and that's part of what led to this role. But I'm new to the industry. I'm new to the people. I'm new to the processes. Like, it's a lot to learn very quickly. And talking to friends who had built their companies, like they know every brick and exactly why it's there. And they're the domain expert as well as the CEO. And it's in some ways it's almost easier to be like, I'm not tempted at all to make decisions that I shouldn't be making. I have no context. So it's almost a delegation superpower of like, you definitely need to be making that decision because I'm new here. And I'm going to try to hold on to that for as long as I can. But it's definitely a little, to borrow a cliche, like drinking from a fire hose, like just trying to learn as much as I can, as quick as I can, and hop in and be useful. Um, Not make any rash decisions, but correct, the things that need to be corrected, or, it's a very interesting process. Feels a little bit like a kite in a hurricane.
I love that analogy. What has your approach been, Eric, in the first 10 weeks? Because I I can resonate in a way. I was in a company as finance
Mm.
director, so I had company and industry knowledge and knowledge of the team, and then I progressed and stepped into the role of CEO as a newbie. What has your approach been in those first 3, 4, 5 weeks? Have you gone in with lots of ideas and you've implemented lots of initiatives already, or have you stood back, met the team, listened to the team, and been very reluctant and patient with I suppose directing what you want to do?
I think 80-20 towards patience. This team is incredible. Like every situation will be different. So this is not a prescription. This is just really what felt right in my case. The team is tenured and experienced and professional and excited to just have a stable environment in which to do their jobs and do great work and serve authors. So it was really a process of most eagerly just getting to know them and sort of understanding how all the pieces fit together and who the people were. Um, the only thing really that I even suggested was on kind of the product line, just simplifying the product line a little bit. And that was when I got a response from the team that was like, oh yes, this is great, we've wanted to do that forever. It's just a question of like being the new person willing to question some of the assumptions, and people like remember, they're like, oh yeah, we didn't like that decision when it was made 2 years ago, like yes, let's change that. And so it's just like soft pokes, I think, to see what the team really believes, because sometimes people stop questioning it, and when there's a new context for them, it can be a good reminder to be like, let's step back, let's reevaluate, let's see what still makes sense and what doesn't. But yeah, I've I got the spiel from actually Xavier at Enduring Ventures when we joined. He's like, it gave me a smattering of like newbie CEO advice, and one of them was like, don't be too passive, but don't be too aggressive. There was more nuance to it than that, but it was really like one of those like paradoxical things of like, don't tiptoe, but be present, be like very present, but not too aggressive, but
Yeah,
not, yeah, don't tread too lightly, but tread lightly. Yeah, it was a fascinating dance to do. But so far the host has not rejected the graft, so we're seems like we're off to a good start
I
culturally.
love that. The host hasn't rejected the graft. Yes, it's important to let people know you're there, that you're listening, but they don't need to see a hammer in your back pocket. Uh,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah, and that team had been through a lot, man, the last
yeah.
couple months. So I was not. I really just wanted everybody to feel stable and comfortable and heard, and um, like things like we were going back to a place where they could focus on just doing good work. And I think we are off to a good start there.
And in the context of expressing empathy, standing in the shoes of that team, that's beautiful what you've just described, to recognize and acknowledge what the team have been through. How important do you feel empathy is in the context of your role as CEO?
I think in this role, it's incredibly important. In this role, I'm not like the team and their expertise and their talent is the product. We are really a professional services organization more than anything else. That's not true of every business, but it's certainly true of this one. And in that sense, I think this is really a place where if the team is calm and peaceful and happy, and he has the path cleared and the context necessary to do their work well, that will show up in our product, that will show up in happy customers, that will show up in referrals, and the whole system will work well. And as I mentioned, I'm under no delusion that I know anything, that I know more than anyone else at the company about how to do any of the individual crafts well, whether that's editing or proofreading, cover design, page layout, publishing, promotion, marketing, like all of that. We have domain experts in all of those things. And my role is just to understand what they need, help them create nicely overlapping seams between each other, so the customers and authors have great experiences as they move through the writing journey and publishing journey. But that, to your question, like that comes from empathy, not any unique brilliance from me. Even if I think I have it, I should probably sit on it and just let them do their jobs.
Well, I think you're doing yourself a disservice there in terms of the knowledge and wisdom that you're bringing. And I say that because for those who are listening, I'm holding up Eric's first book, The Almanac of Naval Ravikant. And I read this book years ago, and I keep coming back to this book. I have this book absolutely destroyed. There's stars in it, there's post-its in it, there's notes at the side. It literally is a Bible. I wasn't aware of Naval Ravikant prior to it, and then the forward was by Tim Ferriss. I heard Tim Ferriss talking about Naval Ravikant, searched, came up with your book. This was years ago, and just have become fascinated. I've gone down the rabbit hole of Naval Ravikant. So it's a wonderful book. 16,000 likes, almost 16,000 reviews on Amazon, which is incredible. So congratulations on this. We're going to come to your second book in a moment, but what for those listening who are not aware of Naval Ravikant, I know this is a question you've answered a lot of times, but who is he, and why were you compelled to write a book about him?
Yeah, Naval is one of a small handful of people that, and to be clear, like I've never even met Naval in person. Like I do not know him personally, but he is somebody that I admired almost everything that I saw him share, like his whole worldview. And I truly believe there's something to learn from everyone. But when you see someone where you're like, man, I admire how he conducts his business, I admire how he invests, I admire the moral underpinnings of how he works, I admire how he thinks about education, I admire how he how he hires, I admire the companies that he's built and the way he does interviews and the way he conducts himself online and the uniqueness of that. Like it's hard to resist sort of going deeper down those rabbit holes. And I was introduced to him at this point, maybe 15 years ago almost, when it was just him and his partner Nivi writing a blog called Venture Hacks. It was about the game theory of venture capital, and it was early in Naval's sort of public career. And I met somebody from the Valley, and I was, I think, 19, and he was like, go read everything on Paul Graham's blog, and go read everything on Venture Hacks, and you will understand, that's the 101 course of Silicon Valley. And I was like, okay. And I went and read everything on both of those, and I was like, that's my guy. Like, these are amazing. This is incredible. And so I followed Naval for the next 10 years, and I learned so much from between Twitter and podcasts and things like that. And it wasn't until I think 2017 or 18, he did this interview on the Knowledge Project with Shane Parrish, that I think is one of the greatest podcast episodes of all time. I listened to it 3 times in a week, and I was frustrated by, it's like, man, this is timeless wisdom. Like this is like Meditations by Marcus Aurelius quality thinking. And it's in this, it's like unsearchable, ephemeral medium that is still a subculture. I love podcasting. I'm incredibly bullish on it, but the reach of podcasts, especially back then, still did not really compare to the reach of books. And I think there's a lot of value to be gained by just transforming mediums. So I was like, man, I wish she had written a book. And I realized all the raw material was out there to do it. And I, from a selfish perspective, it's like, I really want to spend 3 years like immersed in this material. Like I want to learn everything I can from Naval. I want to understand all his source material, his worldview. And so I tweeted random idea, and Naval retweeted it, and 5,000 people were like, oh my God, yes, you have to do this. And, what I thought was going to take 3 months turned into a 3-year project where I was like, oh my God, I'm writing Port Charlie's Almanac for Naval. Like, I must be fully comprehensive. And so my first draft was like 600 pages of everything he ever said, meticulously categorized. And I got some very good feedback from some very good friends who were like, I really liked these chapters, and I honestly didn't read these 12. And I was like, okay, got it. I will trim aggressively. But I felt like these lessons were so useful and so universally valuable. I wanted that to be in a medium that was really accessible to people. I wanted to pull more people down this Naval rabbit hole, because I genuinely think the world would be a better place if more people, for them subjectively, internally, for sure. Like, there's a lot of ideas about, distilled, thousands of years of wisdom and philosophy about happiness into some very simple, memorable rules. There's also some principles, similar, like old timeless principles about how to build wealth, which is something most people are going about. And if they can go about it in a more effective, more moral, like, way, then maybe they can get closer to living the life they want and serve people as they do. Back to our scaling with purpose, like almost the same motivations there. And to that end, like, we have given free digital copies of both of these books actually away for free. So they're available online. They've reached every corner of the earth at this point. Like, you said there's 16,000 reviews on Amazon. My napkin math is that more than 1 million copies of the Naval book have been sold, and probably 5 million more have been distributed for free.
Wow. I want to acknowledge that, because it should be a book that is part of the curriculum of every business school across the globe. You have summed that up beautifully. I want to pick on the core themes of the book, which are underlying principles to wealth and happiness. And when we listen to a lot of people out there, they either have one or the other, but it seems contrarian, or it seems paradoxical to have both. And this is why I really love the wisdom of Naval Ravikant. He also speaks a lot on the term leverage. So I would love if you could share with our listeners and distill for them in the next kind of 5 minutes those key principles to wealth and happiness. And for our listeners, this is something that you'll want to replay time and time again. And there's actually an algorithm in the back of the book, which I love. Thank you for doing this, because I love this. An algorithm for happiness, which equals health plus wealth plus good relationships. Tell us more about that, Eric.
Yeah, as you point out, there's a lot of people talking about wealth and a lot of people talking about happiness, and very few talking about the interaction between the two. I think it's helpful to consider a gradient almost, and the, not trade-offs, but the way they work together, right? And the core of that, I think, is the fundamental Buddhist insight: desire is the root of all suffering, right? And so your relationship with happiness and peace in your life comes largely from how many desires you allow into your life. And we are surrounded by these incredible engines of desire. Like, what is Instagram if not the most effective engine for desire ever created? It's addictive, it's ever present, it's notifying you, it's constantly like watching what you react to and giving you more of what you want, whether that's yachts or cheeseburgers or attractive people, like whatever it is, it's feeding that desire constantly. And that is a slippery slide to unhappiness. And so the fundamental piece of happiness is, how many things do you actually desire? And the way Naval puts it is, desire is a contract you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want. And we all have this relationship by default, usually, with wealth. Like, whatever, there's actually a really interesting survey that just came out of Hampton, which is like a network for CEOs and executives. And they surveyed everybody, and it asked them their net wealth and their net worth and their desired net worth. And basically everybody had a desired net worth of 2 to 3 times whatever their current net worth is. And so we're constantly moving the goalposts on ourselves. And that's not always a bad thing, but you have to acknowledge that almost everybody listening to this podcast probably has enough, like objectively has enough. They have enough for the version of themselves that existed 3 years ago. They certainly have enough for the version of themselves that existed 20 years ago. They have enough for the other 99.5% of people on the planet. They might have unfathomable wealth compared to the bottom 90%. And it is within all your power to choose to evaluate what you currently have as enough. And that doesn't have to take away your purpose and your goal. You're striving for the next thing. And this is something I'm working towards. I don't know. It's something you can achieve minute to minute, and then lose the next minute and work to get back. It's like a meditation practice of allowing yourself to feel you have enough, be happy with where you are, and still sort of lean pleasantly and politely in the direction of more. Like it doesn't have to, you don't have to stop your life and become a monk in order to have enough. You just have to change how you're evaluating that a little bit and actively work to remove the things that are causing, unfiltered new desires in your life. I think that's probably the single most effective thing to do. And for everyone to evaluate, is it easier to accomplish this or to eliminate the desire? And for almost everything, it's easier to eliminate the desire. Like I listen to a stand-up comedian and I'm like, maybe I should go become a famous stand-up comedian. Maybe that I should just add that to my list of life desires. I want to do Madison Square Garden. Actually, that's 20 years of sacrifice and hard work. And it's probably better to just let that desire go. And I can also, hope to grow my business and work towards it without signing that contract that I'm not going to be happy until I achieve some number.
Yeah, and that's the critical point. Let me ask, when you joined Scribe, were you determined to keep Scribe at the same level as it currently is in terms of revenue, in terms of number of authors that you serve, in terms of team size, or have you a vision to expand that?
This is where it all falls down, of course, right? Because I'm insane. And I was like, well, I'm taking this job because I believe we can become like the biggest next generation publisher in the world. And now the challenge is to remain happy as I do that work and remember that I don't have to withhold joy and peace from myself while I pursue that goal, which is easier said than done, right? Like, moment to moment, I have it or lose it. And maybe, Naval says we can be a certain percentage enlightened every day. It's not some state that you achieve and then have forever. Maybe some days I'm 0% enlightened. Other days, maybe it's 4 or 5%. If I'm at the beach that day, maybe it's 20. There's a lot of things that affect that. But even knowing where the goal is and where the levers are, like that's all I can really do with the book. Like I can't change your internal state. All Naval can do for us and the book can do for us is say, oh, now I understand. I can now observe the relationship between these things in my life. And a lot of people just don't know why they're unhappy. Like they have no understanding of the formula or what goes into it. And, it is a worthy pursuit. I think, Naval says he the reason he went down this sort of philosophical rabbit hole, I mean, maybe 15 years ago, is like, I achieved every material desire I had in life, and it solved maybe 20% of the problems that in my life. Like we have this perception that, achieving the next wealth milestone will solve everything. He's like, I'm smart. I achieved everything I wanted to in the material world, and I wasn't happy. And somebody asked him, if you're so smart, like, why aren't you happy? Why isn't that something that you are working towards with as much fervor as you work towards accumulating wealth or building a business or becoming a great investor? Like, he's like, oh, I suppose I can do that. And so, this book is the distilled version of 15 years of reading philosophy and distilling it. He really has a gift for the distilled, memorable, sort of pithy aphorism, insight, cone, whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah, the depth of the guy's wisdom, and it is something that I haven't heard before. And his there's that plus his ability to relate in a relatable way that you get it, where others have a similar depth, but you cannot, or certainly I struggle to connect and resonate in the same way. What I'm hearing you say, Eric, is the fact that we should have a vision. It should be something that we lean into, but actually we need to be mindful of decoupling our happiness to the success of the goals enshrined in that vision. And that requires work, and daily work around, as you say, becoming enlightened, that ultimately reaching those goals in itself will be ephemeral in terms of the happiness that it provides. What do you do on a daily basis, weekly basis, having studied Naval's work for the last decade? What does your day look like? What does your morning routine look like? What are practices and rituals now that are non-negotiable in order to maintain that sense of enlightenment around the fact that, look, I'm 33 years of age. I want to do big things here as a CEO. We can really make a significant impact in the world with this business and serve many more people than we're serving. But actually, I'm not going to attach my happiness to that outcome.
Yeah. Easier said than done. And I think there's a lot of things that go into it. I try to really control the environment and remember that mental health is sort of downstream of physical health. Like that's the foundation of it. So doing all the things you need to do to sleep well, doing the things you need to do to make room for your workout and healthy food in your life. And I recognize the best version of what the best version of myself is capable of, and what the not best version of myself is capable of, and how one of me reacts versus another one of me reacts to bad news or to good news or anything like that. So yeah, I try to sleep well, try to eat healthy, I try to move every day. I try to always make room for friendships and relationships that are like sort of the touchstones of life. And controlling, especially the digital environment, right? Like delete Instagram, make your phone black and white. It's just like little hacks and some habits, like happiness habits. There's a little list of them in the book. Some of them I've adopted, some I haven't. Like there's one, there's probably two that stuck with me the most. The first is a quote that I drink at least a cup of coffee every day. And there's a quote Naval has that says, if you can't be happy with a cup of coffee, you won't be happy with a yacht. And so like the moment that you start with a cup of coffee, I just like take a second to remember that and appreciate this like steamy, warm beverage. It's about to give me like a stimulate, and where the beans came from and what is all happening. And just like take a beat to appreciate that. The other is when you feel the sun on your skin, like look up and smile, right? Like the physiological, starting with the physiological and like letting that go trickle down into your mental state. And I had an amazing first CEO and mentor and close friend who would always say, like, no matter how bad work was, he's like, it's just work. Like, and his wife is a doctor. So like constantly, it was, VC backed startup, high stress, high burn, tech world, insane working environment, high turnover. Like it is as stressful as a white collar work environment can be, short of life altering consequences. And, he'd come home and complain about work, and his wife would be like, anybody die? Cause like I had a couple. And he's like, it's just work. Like, it's just work. We're playing a big video game. There's a purpose to it. It's important, but it's not worth shortening your life over through the stress, through everything else. It's just maintaining a perspective. And there's a lot of ways to do that. Everybody's going to have their own, but whatever you need to do to maintain perspective, having different ways to win every day, right? Like you have a shit day at work, you can still win in the gym, you can still win in the kitchen, you can still like win with your friends and family. And that all helps, right? Like don't let your life be consumed by any one of those pursuits.
Yeah, all of that resonates so strongly. I always encourage our listeners at the start of the podcast to go and grab a notepad and pen, because we always have wonderful conversations, and a cup of coffee. I have one cup of coffee a day, and I've become somewhat of a coffee snob, given where I was brought up, which was like a tablespoon of mellow birds with like 3 sugars and loads of milk. I take a black Americano, and I will travel to get that black Americano, and I come back and I absolutely love that. And when I encourage people to go and grab a cup of coffee and a notepad and pen, I know when I'm listening to a podcast exactly where I'm sitting. I have my notepad, I have my coffee, and I so appreciate that time. So that really resonates. I do, of course, listen to a lot of podcasts at the gym and while I'm out walking in there, but that resonates.
There's some
strongly.
that get that,
Yeah.
that chair and notepad treatment.
Exactly. Yeah. That's my Sunday morning looking out, and no one's up, and I've got this quiet hour, and it's just absolute bliss. So that resonates really strongly, and there are a number of practices in there. Again, I'm a huge fan of capturing 3 wins at the end of every day. In a business context, we always encourage the business leaders who have gone through our program or otherwise to capture wins of the week, have it the last communication on a Friday before you leave the office, and regardless of how tough the week has been, leave yourself and your team with those wins aligned to your vision. It just changes the mood as you're coming into the weekend. So all of that really resonates strongly. Before we get on to Balaji, I just want you to speak to leverage for a moment, because what we say, growing is doing more with more, scaling is doing more with leverage. So can you share with our listeners what this term leverage means in the context of scaling, life and your business?
Yeah, this has the risk of becoming its own 1-hour podcast. Yeah. So you cut me off whenever you need to. This is my favorite chapter probably from the Naval book, because every chapter could get turned into its own book, but this is the one that I feel like is most underexplored of all the concepts, right? It's the deepest and the least understood, and the most pertinent to how we're working in the age that we're living in. So when I say leverage, and this is the mental model of like leverage, like the physics lever, right? It is the fact that I can't go lift 800-pound stone, but if you give me an 18-foot board, I can lift it. So how do we, like, that analogy expands to a ton of different things, some physical, some digital, some conceptual. So the 4 types of leverage, these are like the broad categories that I think in. And as I list these, I will say usually people have a gift for 1 or 2 of them. They have one that they know about, but don't feel as accessible to them skill-wise. They're like, that's not my gift. And then there's another one that they're blind to entirely. And so as you hear these, like, think about which one is which for you, and figure out how you can maybe supplement that weakness, either with somebody else on your team or partner or something like that. So the 4 broad categories of leverage: tools, products, people, and capital. So tools, the analogy I like to use is a lumberjack, right? If you're just you and your bare hands in the woods, there's only so much wood you can collect. If I give you an axe, maybe you can take down 2 trees an hour. If I give you a chainsaw, maybe you can take down 20 trees an hour. If I give you one of those big badass automated tractor things, maybe you can take down 200 an hour, right? And the only difference is tools and the know-how of how to use them. So that's physical and digital tools. Products, that's a product of your mind. that is capturing your judgment, your wisdom, your experience in, whether it's a podcast, that's what we're doing right now, written instructions. It's a great way to scale yourself within a company, software, an algorithm, even an automation, code, media, a book, like all of those things. Like when you and I wrote books, we were creating a product of our mind. We were externalizing it and putting it in this package that could serve millions of people, not just concurrently, but also like through time in the future, right? So I think of these as like making little clones of yourself that go out and execute very specific things, pieces of your knowledge that you've encoded in them. The third is people. So that, of course, the first thing everybody thinks about is employees. That yes, and you might also consider people that are not necessarily compensated, but are fans, supporters, friends. Some of the highest leverage people in the world have very few employees, but huge influence. So Taylor Swift, Oprah, the Pope, Ronaldo, Messi, like the people who are leveraged by respect or fame or influence, not just, they don't have huge employees. Of course, president is also massively leveraged through the military, but that covers everything, right? And you could think of those also part-time volunteers, supporters of your cause, people on your team, etc. And then the fourth is capital. So of course money, but also real estate, large physical assets, things like that. And if you have command of all four of those categories, if you are skilled across all of them or have a close collaborator who is, I consider that to be everything that you need to scale with purpose, right? Like if you cannot, if one of those types is inaccessible to you for whatever reason, you will hit a ceiling on scale. And it'll be a challenge to kind of break through and continue to grow. So you want capacity in all of those. There's also, you could work with, I consider vendors sometimes to be like bundles of all four of those, right? So if you can offlay a huge amount of that, those things. So I draw this out, I literally quarterly or something like that. I kind of make a table and I say tools, products, people, capital. What do I have? What's working for me? What's nearby? What's the next step? And then third, what's like the future state? What do I want on my like horizon for how I'm going to add to that? And just visualize like adding all of these levers to your life so that you can, whatever purpose you're pursuing, whatever business you're trying to build, like what is the next best lever to add to increase, the total volume of your impact. And it's hard to like kind of work across all of those and extend them thoughtfully and get the order right. That's the challenge, but just seeing that framework helps me figure out where my blind spots are, what I'm not paying attention to. If you want to continually sort of compound and increase that impact, it's going to take, the solution is in one of those four domains. And so just like laying it all out there, you're like, oh man, I haven't thought about the tools that my people need to get the job done, and maybe I need the capital to go get it, but you'll start to see the pieces come together.
Yeah, it maps beautifully to the 10 principles in our 10 principle scale X framework. We speak to the importance of people, to performance, and within that spotlighting cash, which is a nod to capital, the partnerships. And there's a wonderful maxim. I interviewed Daniel Priestley, who is author of 5-6 books at this stage, heads up a global company called Dent Global. And one of the maxims by which he runs his company is that someone this morning woke up with the thing that you need. So in that context, it's about finding the person who has that tool, finding the person who has those products, finding the people. The greatest gift any leader can give their business is the gift of a great hire. Finding someone with the capital, but someone this morning woke up with the capital that you need to scale with your business. Somebody woke up who is passively thinking about a new career. they haven't connected with you
Yeah.
yet. Someone woke up this morning with software that's going to help automate the processes within your business. So again, from a leadership perspective, it's you finding those tools, those products, those people, that capital. Somebody has that, and it's for you then to find it and leverage it once you do.
Yeah, it's such a fun game when you see it that way. And especially, dude, especially in this age, right? Because we now like these products with zero marginal cost of replication, unprecedented reach and capacity for change. Like when you can record a podcast like this that 100,000 people could
Yeah.
listen to, like it's a stadium of people that have us on demand, a little clone of us that can just run this on demand whenever they want. It is unfathomably useful. Like it is just an incredible use of time to create those things. And this is one of my laws of leverage, right? Don't repeat yourself, record yourself. Like as soon as you've answered a question a few times, that should be a blog post, that should be a podcast, that should like answer it internally, encode it in automation, write some software to do it. Like use that in your business. Do not keep solving the same problem over and over and over again. That's an unleveraged thing. But yeah, try to find a position where leverage matters, like where you can actually grow that, because not every job, not every role, not every company is going to have an environment where that approach makes sense. But hopefully yours does, and you can break out with some of these.
Yeah, as I say, it resonates so strongly, and as you said at the outset, Eric, before I opened up the question, we could spend a podcast on leverage alone. I love the concept of leverage. Let's move on to your latest book. And look, I have to say, congratulations. Really well done. It's one thing to write one book. It's another to write multiple books. I wish you every success with this. Your latest book, The Anthology of Balaji, A Guide to Technology, Truth, and Building the Future. So for those listening, it's going to sound like a repeat of the naval conversation. Who is Balaji, and why should anyone be interested in his work?
Yeah, Balaji's an interesting cat, man. He is incredibly well followed in Silicon Valley, has been for years, probably 1 million followers on Twitter. He has been, I think he has like 3 degrees, including a PhD from Stanford in computational biology. He went and started a company doing genomics. They did some of the first genome testing for couples, and put huge dents in some of these genetic diseases early on. Then he got into crypto, started a few companies, was a very early investor in cryptocurrencies. And this is, we're talking like 2012, 13, not 2020. He started a company that was acquired by Coinbase and became the CTO of Coinbase for a while, all the way sort of selling. I think he sold his first company for a few $100 million, rolled a ton of that back into, he's a prolific angel investor, hundreds of angel investments, many of which you would have heard of, and really has become, the way he says it in his foreword, like he's become the id of technology. Like he is willing to say he's just farther in the future than like almost anybody else, right? Mark Andreessen, where he was a GP at Andreessen Horowitz for a while, an investor, and helped lead their crypto fund and some of their earlier like big marketplace investments. And it's this is the most useful thing, like to sum up Balaji, was said by Mark Andreessen. It's like when Balaji is wrong, it's because he over extrapolates, not under extrapolates. He sees around 5 corners. He takes things to 11. He sees the second, third, fifth order effects. And when he's wrong, it's because the third order effects, the real world goes to the third order effects, not the fifth. But Balaji predicted all the way to the fifth. And it's a fascinating, he's such a high output of like good, interesting new ideas, new ways to see the world. He's a huge history buff, so he's read a ton of, and is recommended reading in the back of the book, ton of history books, And he's got this unique perspective that technology is the driving force of history. And so when you see some of these ideas laid out, like, oh, that's like the power structure, the rise and fall of different empires, different cultures, different, it comes from what technology was most recently discovered. And seeing our era and how we live through that lens, like, is a very fascinating way to see it. Um, he's a prolific, like a very interesting guy, and I think he's now written The Network State, which he published 2 years ago, I believe, maybe last year. It became an instant like Wall Street Journal bestseller, even though he only published the Kindle version. And it's really about like starting entirely new countries so that we have a frontier in which to advance technological progress, because it's been a little stifled by some of the regulatory pieces that we have now. We've basically over-indexed on safety and have lost the capability to build and experiment and have frontiers that, you know, is part of what made the Western world great over the last, 100 years.
So is Balaji only relevant for those leaders of scaling technology companies in Silicon Valley who have aspirations to become a unicorn? You know, what does the SME leader who has 20 people in Kansas City or in Mid Ulster in Ireland, what can they learn from Balaji in the context of their own small to medium sized business, especially around, I suppose, that frame of being able to see into the future? Can you make him
Yeah.
relatable to our audience in terms of things that we can learn from Balaji?
Yeah, this is an extremely fair question, because all the critique of Balaji, and I think it's a fair one, is that people have trouble bringing him down to earth. You go listen to like an 8-hour podcast with him on Lex Friedman, which is an exceptional podcast, and you will have your mind blown, but you still won't really know what to do with that.
Yeah.
And so what I attempted to do in the book is really like isolate for two things, which is like, what are his most foundational, universal, like evergreen, applicable ideas? Like, I truly believe anybody on earth can pick up this book and find something useful, just like the Naval book. Like, I want that to be my bar. And I want to see highlights on every page. So there's a ton of ideas in there. You're not going to use all of them, but you will certainly use a few. And the whole third section, building the future, is really a handbook for founders and CEOs. It's about how to ideate, how to validate new ideas, whether those are new business ideas or new business lines, how to meticulously sort of organize that approach to the market, how to scale up. He talks, it is a technology playbook, but it is a universal playbook. Like, all of these ideas are going to give you sort of new ways of thinking about how to visualize your business, how to manage your business, how to run through it. And you could read the book in a few hours. It's not thick at all. I really try to make these rich like soil, like dense, but like nutrients on every page. What I hope people see, yes, the book is a guide to technology, and the whole first section is about, it's not about like, here you have to go start a tech company. And one of my favorite ideas, and one that I hope everyone listening truly, like, I think the first section is very much the most important from a worldview perspective. It is on the order of importance of the principles of wealth in the Naval book, or the principles of happiness in there. Is that technology, one, is universal. There is no people, we talk about the technology industry, right? You just asked, like, what about people who don't work in technology? Everybody works in technology. Like, there is no technology industry. There is no physics industry. Every industry has technology, and your position in that industry is a function of how effectively you use the technology that's available, right? Technology is a force multiplier. Whatever purpose you are trying to scale, whatever customer you're trying to serve, the definition of an improvement in technology is that it helps you do more with less. And
Back to leverage again.
Back to leverage. It's endemic in so many of the small business owners that I worked with, that I don't do technology. I don't know how to use it. I don't know how to. And you see these guys using a spiral notebook and a pen. And like, no wonder you can't scale your fucking business. Like, there's incredible tools available to you. And you don't have to become a tech wizard, but this is back to who can you surround yourself with that can help you access those tools. You need the tools, the products, the people, and the capital to scale. And tools, almost certainly, the best tools are almost certainly somewhere near the frontier of technology. You don't have to go become an AI wizard tomorrow to win your, plumbing business in Kansas City. But I bet the best plumbing business in Kansas City has automations embedded in it. I bet they have strong software. I bet they have a good CRM. I bet they have, trucks that run. I bet they have the most powerful tools available to them. And I bet they'll be some of the first to adopt that. So I think it's really important, if you want to win in your industry, if you want to build a great business, to make technology your friend. We're seeing this play out with AI. There's this the writers are going on strike in Hollywood about keep AI out of Hollywood. Like, AI is coming into Hollywood, and the people who are going to win are the ones who learn how to use it, not the people who hold a picket sign saying, protect my job, right? That battle is playing out everywhere. And you want to be the person who, as soon as they invent the longbow, pick up the longbow. This is the story of history. Like, the people with the greater technology tend to prevail. More so than that, it is also a fundamental moral good. Like, we see this, supporting technology, adopting technology, investing in it is absolutely critical to sort of moving forward into a world with abundance. The alternative is to start rationing food, rationing tools, rationing heat, rationing energy. Like, to be anti-technology, to be anti the expansion of clean energy, or just the creation of more energy, is essentially to be pro-poverty. Like, the path you are putting us on is a path where there are fixed amount of resources, and human nature is not going to change in that context. People are going to turn on each other, and that is going to play out in a very ugly way. The reason that we all have comfortable, happy lives that don't involve fighting for resources is because we have ridden this beautiful wave of new technologies to give us computers, give us air conditioning, heat, cars, agricultural, scale. We've massively scaled up our ability to produce food for people, clean water, energy. These are miracles that we absolutely take for granted now. But if we don't continue to create more miracles, we are going to end up going down a dark path. And people are effectively, people were protesting nuclear power. People were protesting the use of self-driving cars. People were protesting the use of advanced farming techniques. We have to do everything we can politically, personally, in our businesses to adopt and support the use of new technology, or we're going to end up a global fall of the Roman Empire, and we're going to go into a dark place. And I don't love to paint that picture, but I think it's I spend most of my time in this picturing this incredible world of abundance, right? We have another. Can you imagine living through the Industrial Revolution? We have another one of those coming. To go from, I use an outhouse and people die at 50, to electrification, railroads, internal combustion, steel, the telegraph, phones, the internet, air travel, going from Kitty Hawk to landing on the moon. You imagine living through that? We have the potential to live through that again. But the past few decades, most of our innovation has been in phones, computers. It's been digital, and that's just more difficult it's less tangible than watching these things that we previously considered to be physical impossibilities, like humans achieving. We have another 100x or 1000x step function coming in the physical world. Between AI, nuclear energy, and mature nanotechnology, we'll be able to build basically perfect control over the material world. Space colonization, these incredible things are coming. And what I hope to do in this book is sort of paint that picture and give people optimism and hope and appreciation for the things that we need to do today to steer us towards that kind of future, which will be better, absolutely objectively better for everyone individually. And I think, as Balaji says, the humans that live in 1,000 years our current experience, abundant though it feels to us, will look to them indistinguishable from the slaves that built the pyramids, right? Like, we are, through the lens of history, we are still living in squalor, and we owe it to the future generations to like continue to invest in that path, like move towards something even more abundant, even more beautiful, even more powerful. And you know, if whatever your agenda is, like if you believe conservation is more important than that, I say those are not false dichotomies, right? Like, the best way to protect the earth and the natural environment is to move past this chapter where we are burning hydrocarbons, build a bunch of nuclear power plants, which are way cleaner energy, give us the capacity to build solar. Like, the path towards abundance is the best path. And that starts with individual decisions to invest in technology in your small business and help other people to do the same. Scale your purpose, like do everything that you can to serve your purpose. And the biggest gains are almost certainly from the implementation of new technology. And I hope that the kernels of that, or the seeds of that, this book plants that in you and shows you how to do that, no matter where you're starting from.
I've never heard technology linked with morality, and I'm really curious about that. Does he have any words of caution to us, to the leaders of businesses who want to scale with purpose, who want to leverage technology for good, to avoid a situation where, you know, we're watching our kids walk around with virtual headsets pretending to live in another world, as opposed to putting on their jacket, coming out into the snow and going for a walk in nature for, you know, for 30 minutes with their pet dog? You know, what wisdom does he have, or what words of caution does he give in that regard, Eric?
Isn't that funny? Like, I give you like a long rant of impassioned speech about all the ways that technology can advance society, and your question is like, but phones and VR, isn't it bad for the kids? Like, shouldn't we, like,
but this is what
a perfect microcosm of like the discussion, right?
But, and I think the discussion is a great one. As a parent of 3 kids, you know, I watch my kids you know, who are at times mindlessly scrolling on Instagram, and I'm feeling their energy 30 minutes later, and it's not a good energy. And I know that if they had taken that 30 minutes and gone out into nature, that they would feel much more empowered, as opposed to looking at what has been on Instagram. On the other side, I absolutely love technology. Calendly, Zoom have just been such enablers. A really, really intuitive and easy technology to access and allow us to have a conversation thousands of miles away. I'm just curious, does he have that word of caution? Because there is something in me where, you know, it's about leveraging technology for good. And I'm personally excited to see where AI goes, as opposed to listening to a lot of the doomsayers around artificial intelligence. I care to frame it as technology for good, but we will hear from others who say, yeah, but. So I'm curious, has Balaji got an opinion on that, how we navigate that?
Yeah, and he does. I didn't mean to dodge the question. Like, he does address it. I just think it's really important to distinguish software from technology, right? Like, when we talk about technology, it has become conflated with like Google, Facebook, Amazon, like software and phones, right? Like, because that has been the frontier for most of our lived experience, we forget that technology includes like self-driving cars, nuclear energy, robotics, like the things that are massively, actually perhaps more impactful on our daily lives, but are less visible in our daily lives. And so we don't think of it as technology. So yes, the trade-offs are heavy, right, with the internet. And you could say, like, I'm not sure that Instagram has like a deeply moral approach in how it engages with its users. social, like I believe that almost every, I've never heard a case that persuaded me that an individual technology did more bad than good in all of the technologies that I can think of in human history. Almost every technology that I can think of, everyone so far does more good than harm. Um, we could debate social media all day long. That's not to say your kids shouldn't
Yeah.
spend less time on Instagram. I don't know.
And maybe
Um,
that's back to me in terms of
but
my
it's all right.
parenting. And I think ultimately this goes back to the essence of our own purpose to inspire, connect, and enable ambitious leaders of SMEs to scale with purpose is about connecting with the consciousness of the leader so that actually they're deeply thoughtful about what they're trying to do in the world, and that purpose can be improving the product that they're currently offering into the market, creating a better culture, or actually just serving a cause. So, that it's really technology. Who is whose hands is the technology in?
Yeah. And I'm interested to see, I mean, it is a trait of every generation to think that the younger generation is bunk, right? Is like on the wrong path. Like these kids in their comic books, they're ruining the world. These kids in the internet, they're ruining the world. These kids in Instagram. Like it, I'm also fascinated to see what happens. Like we are now seeing kind of like the first internet native generation enter the workforce, and they are going to be capable of some incredible things, some really incredible, like the people who are truly fluent in self-education with an infinite library of Alexandria, right? Like there will be lives that are just consumed by video games, and that is sad. There will also be people who are something like superhuman by any previous educational standards, who have been using AI as their close collaborator since they were 10 years old and just had, the perfect tutor. And those people who are determined and hardworking and can learn at that iteration cycle with access to all of the world's information, uh, it's unbelievable, right? It's absolutely unbelievable. And it falls on us to decide how to use those tools that are available to us. It is it's an interesting Rorschach test. Like the technology gives you the chance to be whoever you want to be, and it reveals, like, in the same way that they say power reveals. It doesn't corrupt, but it reveals. Like if you have the opportunity to live in a fantasy world your whole life, some people are going to choose that. And is that great? No, probably not, but it may be better than the alternative for them of living in the reality that they are going to experience. I hope not. I hope that, some of those people, you know, find a different way forward, but we are also going to see people who take full advantage of those tools and those opportunities, and they are going to be perhaps the most capable humans who have ever existed when they have fully like adopted this like digital superhuman Iron Man suit. Is like, I'm fascinated to see it. What is conceptually possible now is mind blowing, and I can't wait to see where it goes.
Here, here. Before we move into the close, Eric, the time has absolutely flown. This is fascinating, by the way. What else? What have we not spoken about that's so critically important in the context of Balaji and the principles that you have distilled in your book for the leaders listening to the show today?
I think we haven't talked about really the whole middle section, which I think everyone will identify with to some extent. It is about truth, and especially specifically truth in media. And to our conversation about Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, it's increasingly difficult to know what is true, what to believe. Like even some of the institutions that we have previously been able to place trust in, we are finding have been, captured, regulatory capture, let's say, less generally bribed or bought, to steer us in a direction that is good for the few, not the many. And I think there's a little bit of a guide in there to learning what sources to trust, how to evaluate things from first principles, the different types of truth that there are out there. And, as a business owner trying to make things happen in the world and interact with that fundamental reality, learning to sort of clear the bullshit off your windshield, and see reality clearly and interact with, the truth of the world is how you get the results that you want. It's hard to know what media to believe, who to trust. I actually am excited. Like, that's partly why I'm so bullish on podcasting, because I think when you find a person who you can trust in a domain and who you are willing to spend a lot of time with, and you really, it's such an interesting flip, from 50 years ago, where you like, what does any individual know compared to the New York Times or compared to the World Health Organization? And now it's like, I actually like trust the individual more in many cases, like the expert individual, who has credential and can show their work and doesn't have other people sort of attempting to influence them. So anyway, it's a fascinating confluence of things, and we certainly live in interesting times.
There's no question about that. And I agree with you on the podcasts. It's what has inspired me, and I know many others. I discovered podcasts for the first time, it's probably 7 or 8 years ago, and I just couldn't believe that these global thinkers, these authorities in whatever topic you want, were willing to give up of their time for, an hour, 2 hours to share that wisdom with people for free. I was just blown away. So that really inspired me when we arrived at this point to host a podcast. I had never any aspirations to get into podcasting, but certainly felt compelled whenever we had crafted our own purpose that actually podcast as a medium is a great way of serving millions of people across the globe. So on that note, given the incredible leaders, that those incredible 2 leaders that you have written about and studied extensively, and many more who you have studied along the way, can you share with our listeners 3 timeless takeaways, Eric?
Yeah, I like this question. The first one, I think, is always work towards a moral good. I think that is for your own health, if nothing else, right? Like you and your reputation with yourself and your family and your community matters. I see a lot of people chasing a false goal for bad reasons. So always work towards a moral good, and you can achieve all your other goals along the way. The second is straight from Naval, but it's the single most useful thing I've ever heard for how to conduct yourself in life, which is impatience for action, patience for results. Like, bias to action, get to work, take the obvious next step as quickly as you can, but never be impatient for the results. Just, let compounding do its work. Know that you're doing the right immediate step and trust the system to return, what that step earns. The third is, where we spent a lot of time actually in the beginning of this conversation, which is that you can be productive and happy at the same time. I don't always remember that, but I certainly try to. I would like to be both of those things every minute of almost every minute of every day for most of my life. And they are not at odds as much as they sometimes feel like they are.
Those are brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. In keeping on the theme of being productive and being happy, What's next for you?
Quite a few things. I'm working on another book. I have a lot of work to do at Scribe. I'm very excited to be serving authors there. So if anyone thinks they would either like to write a book or would benefit from a book, having a book for their career, their podcast, their business, their community, their legacy, we can make a very, very high quality book for you in a relatively small time investment, or we can coach you through the process of writing and be sure you end up with something beautiful, or we can just help you publish something that you've already written and make sure that it's the best possible version of itself. I believe very deeply in that mission. I've seen the absolute, it was transformative to write my book, but it was incredibly, I drastically underestimated how much my life would change once that book was out there, who I would get to meet, the opportunities it would unlock, the conversations it would begin. It's what brought me here today, no doubt about it. And that's true of almost everything in my life. It's been a really fascinating transformation. It couldn't have happened without that book. And I'm very excited to kind of be in a role now where I can help other authors walk through that portal and have that experience also. So yeah, I'm on Twitter all the time. You can reach out to me there. My all this stuff is linked from my personal website, which is ejorgenson.com.
That's brilliant. And we will put a link to the book, if you're happy to provide that link, to the Almanac of Naval Ravikant. Are you providing a similar link to your second book?
Yeah, they're both linked to from my personal website, and they're both available for free digitally. If you're a Kindle person,
Fantastic.
We're working on the audiobook for Anthology of Biology. That'll be a little bit, but yeah, it's all out there.
Yeah, fantastic. And I can testify to the services of Scribe, and it's our book that has brought me here today. And actually, myself and my co-author Claire, now my business partner, have built a business off the back of the work that we invested in the book. So it's just an incredible process, really cathartic, and a wonderful way to give back, a wonderful way to serve. Whenever I came to the process, well, back in 2007, whenever I became CEO of the business, there was no guide to scaling a business. There was no CEO scaling school that you went to, and I spent years trying to read everything I could get my hands on, piece the bits together that were fundamental to actually scaling a business, and that has come together in our own book, Simple Scaling. So it's really important to me. The work that you're doing is incredible. I wish you every success with it, Eric. Incredible that you're only 33. Hugely envious of that fact, that you've many decades of writing and scaling ahead of you. And I want to thank you for your energy, your wisdom, your time, and wonderful conversation today. Take care.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate your time, your curiosity, your measured curiosity. I'm fascinated to dive deeper into simple scaling, and I am now going to be a customer as I'm on this journey myself. I'm going to be very grateful for the work that you've done. I can feel it already. Thank you for what you do.
Brilliant. Well, there's likely a copy in your office, so I'll happy to dive deeper into all things simple scaling. Eric, look, it's been wonderful. I wish you every success. Take care.